In the recent chapter of Berserk, chapter 368, Griffith took Casca away from Guts for a second time. This was one of the biggest turning points in the story of Berserk, period. It may be the biggest turning point since the eclipse. The story is now headed into a direction where it seems like Guts is going to have to pursue Griffith in order to retake Casca, or Guts is going to have some sort of arc where his character changes a lot more, and he begins to further conquer his emotions, most specifically in this situation, sadness and sorrow. However, the story before this big event of Griffith showing up and snatching Casca was sort of heading in a direction where it seemed like Guts was no longer really going to pursue Griffith because he had already regained Casca's mind, and it seemed like within time Casca would be able to look at him again, things would be peaceful, and the story of Berserk would have a peaceful, well-deserved peaceful conclusion. But of course, Griffith comes in and ruins everything once again. Now, this uncalled for appearance of Griffith literally changed everything. Casca has now been taken away again, and we don't really know why. Again, Griffith has remained an extremely mysterious character as the story of Berserk has gone on, and he is continuing to show how important this mystery behind him really is, because we still don't know why he took Casca, why he's doing all of this, why he's destroying Elfhelm, why he won't talk or attack Guts at all when he has the power to kill him, and what kind of power he really possesses. We know he's a lot like a god. I mean, he's quite literally God based on my theory, but we don't really know what he's trying to do right now. He's already sort of achieved his goal of having a kingdom. He's literally made Fantasia. He's made the most peaceful civilization that has ever lived in the Berserk world. But what is Griffith trying to do now with Casca? There are a lot of questions behind this, and I'm gonna try my damn hardest to find an answer to this question, even though it is going to be very, very difficult. So yes, as I tend to do with every Berserk chapter, let's theorize about what could possibly happen to Casca and why Griffith has done what he has done, why he has broken all of our hearts, and why he has pushed Guts even further into despair once again. Okay, so as of right now, I have two possible concrete ideas as to why Griffith is taking Casca away. Now, these two ideas can kind of branch off into a few more specific ideas, but for the purpose of this video, there are two big main ideas. So the first possibility that I'm going to be talking about, the first big main possibility, and this is something that people have sort of considered in the past because of the importance of Guts' Bailet being in his possession, as well as, again, the mystery behind Griffith, the fact that we haven't seen the God Hand in hundreds of chapters, and the possibility and the foreshadowing of another eclipse. So yes, if Griffith no longer has an attachment to Casca, he may sacrifice her to get rid of his Moonlight Boy body because it causes him to feel a connection with Guts and Casca, which diverts him off the path towards his goal. Whether it's getting his kingdom or going even further past that, which is what I do think it is, Griffith may feel the need to eliminate Casca in this situation because she is standing in between him and his goals, because when he is the Moonlight Boy, he feels too much of a connection to her, and getting rid of her would sever that connection and would get rid of his ties to Guts and Casca and free him from the emotion he feels as the Moonlight Child. So I did kind of bring up the idea of an eclipse, but if you think about it, Casca can't really be sacrificed for a second time into an eclipse because she's already been sacrificed. She was sort of destined to die, but she didn't die. Meaning that if Griffith is trying to really eliminate her, which is a possibility, but I don't see it entirely happening, if Griffith is trying to eliminate Casca forcefully, he can simply allow her to be taken over by the demons, possessed, and Griffith can end up killing her. Now, there is a problem with this because if Griffith truly does still feel a connection with Casca, he can't really do this, and who knows what will happen when he goes into the Moonlight Boy's body. And if he truly wanted to sever all the connections he had as a Moonlight Boy, to sever all of the bonds and all of the emotions that he really did have back then, and to get rid of the emotions he had when he was the child, don't you think it would be realistic for him to take Guts as well as to take Casca? Because Guts also plays a role being the sort of father figure to that Moonlight Child, and Griffith feels a connection towards Guts when he is in that child's body. So that is the main problem with this first possibility, being that first of all, Casca can't even let's just be realistic. Casca isn't really going to die, right? She's such a pillar of a character. She's super important to the story. I don't see it to be realistic for them to take away Casca in this story because of how important she is to Guts and how important she is to the story in general, and the fact that her character is not even near completion at all yet. She still has a lot to go. We can debate whether or not this first possibility is going to come true, but what I do think will definitely happen in this final arc of Berserk is going to be Griffith taking a lot more of the spotlight and sort of becoming the focus of the story, and we're really going to see more of the story through his point of view. Now I say this because we have seen a lot of Guts as of late. Almost the entire journey has been Guts. We have not really gotten too many deep monologues from Griffith. We haven't really gotten too much mental struggle from Griffith. I mean, to be fair, he probably has had no mental struggle, but you get what I mean. Like with Guts, we see what he's going through inside. With Griffith, we have no clue. The only time we see Griffith is when he's on the battlefield or when he's talking to other people in his council and other things that do not contain internal dialogue from Griffith. He is still shrouded in mystery, and we need to answer many questions here. We need to answer the questions relating to the God Hand, what Griffith's connection right now is to the God Hand. Is he really the God himself? How has he become this God? Like how is Femto the other part of his body, and how is he in his own body, and how is he connected to the Moonlight Boy's body? 3 different bodies. We need explanations for these things, and we also need to see Griffith's eventual downfall, and that is going to be the highlighted conclusion of the end of Berserk, which I think is something that is inevitable, being Griffith's downfall, because I don't see the story continuing without this character being dead, possibly even worse. Another thing that I have a feeling will be possible is that the more bad that Griffith does, for the lack of a better term, the worse his punishment and his downfall will be. Okay, correction, after thinking over it a bit more, I don't actually think this is going to be the case, and that is because what Griffith is doing is objectively good. It's just from Guts' perspective, it's bad because he's taking Casca away. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, and post-Eclipse, Griffith hasn't really done anything terrible. The only real terrible thing that we know of is what he did in the Eclipse, and you could make an argument for what he's doing here to be sort of bad. But besides that, he's been a lot more like a savior, and he's been doing a lot more good than bad. Another reason it is realistic for Griffith to eliminate Casca to a certain extent is the fact that she's the only one who knows what Griffith has truly done to get here. Aside from, of course, Guts, because, you know, Guts was there as well. It does surprise me that Griffith has not paid any attention to Guts, because if taking Casca, because she knows what he's done, was the reason for taking Casca, then it would be realistic to take Guts as well, right? And as the Skull Knight said, could the undying will of man to resist also be part of fate? Now when I think about this line in relation to the God theory, what comes to mind is Griffith, the one controlling destiny, because if you do remember, the idea of evil talked about how he controls destiny, and if the idea of evil is in fact Griffith's heart, then that means Griffith's will controls the will of man and destiny. And that also makes sense because it seems as though Griffith is present in everyone's collective unconscious. So this begs the question, based on what Skull Knight says and what we quote unquote know about Griffith based on the God theory, is Griffith purposely causing Guts to suffer because his own goal requires that, but doesn't require Guts to die? For everything to fall into place according to Griffith's plan, he needs to weave destiny in the same way that God would, because in this case he's playing the role of God. Now, I've spoken a lot about the first possibility. The second possibility I see more likely than the first, and it is the complete opposites of the first possibility. Griffith will restore Casca's memory. That is the most summarized I can possibly get with the second idea. The idea that Griffith, with his incredible powers and with the number of people that he has by his side, is going to restore Casca's memory in one way or another. Now here's the thing. This is based on the idea that Griffith enjoys this mother-child connection to Casca, and he does feel some sort of way towards Casca. I'm not going to get too specific with that because I don't want to make any assumptions. This entire video is an assumption. But if Griffith does feel this connection to Casca, then that means in order for Casca to make contact with Griffith verbally and in pretty much any other way, she's going to need to look at him, and she can't look at him right now. So the realistic thing for Griffith to do in this situation would just be to restore her memory, and would just be to get rid of her trauma. Now the problem that presents itself here is that if Griffith was to restore Casca's memory, then Casca would remember everything Griffith did to her, and this leads to my fault follow-up point, this would be tragic. This would be really tragic. Okay, Griffith would wipe Casca's memory of Guts entirely. If he does end up doing that, then Casca will entirely spend her time with Griffith, just like she did in the past when she was in the Band of the Hawk. And again, the whole reason behind why Griffith would not kill Casca is because he feels this motherly connection to her, and she quite literally is the mother to him when he is the child. And I know it's slightly contradictory because Griffith should feel no emotion, but we know now that in the Moonlight Boy's body, Griffith does feel emotion. And this, interestingly enough, ties into the Freudian idea of the boy-child unconsciously wanting to compete with the father, which in this case should be kinda Guts, for the mother's love. But I think what is paramount with this second possibility is the idea that fate and causality play a massive role. Again, as Griffith forges the future through destiny, he requires certain people to be in certain places, and as we see, he separated Guts from Casca again, which once again ties back into the Skull Knight's idea of the struggler being connected to fate. Yes, it would be extremely gut-wrenching if Griffith was simply to wipe Casca's memories of the eclipse of Guts and to just live with her, but it is a possibility nonetheless, and as Berserk fans who have suffered quite a lot, we're gonna have to accept something like this if it does come. Doing so would also ensure that Casca loves Griffith and would take care of him when he is the child, because Casca just intuitively has this connection to the child, and when Griffith is the Moonlight Child, he is the most vulnerable to be killed. So the next time the gang was to come into contact with the Moonlight Child, you already know Guts would immediately kill him, and Griffith cannot allow that. So having Casca by his side will ensure that the Moonlight Boy is secured. The whole purpose of this video is just me throwing shit out there. So there are two extremely polar opposite possibilities as to what Griffith intends to do with Casca. Again, there are a ton of other possibilities, but I'll leave that for you to theorize in the comments or in any other way you want to. That's it for me. Hope you enjoyed. See you later.